Hi, Democrats. It's Friday, April 29th, and it's time for the Chair's Daily Live. Happy birthday, Andrea. All righty, so there's a lot of stuff that I want to talk about today, but I'm going to spare you guys, and I'm bringing on a subject matter expert because I think you guys want to hear from somebody other than me some of the time. Yesterday morning, I received several text messages. Alicia, are you watching? Alicia, are you watching? Letting me know that some shenanigans were happening at the state capitol. And so I reached out to Representative John Waldron, who graciously agreed to come on today and indulge me in my questions about the shenanigans. So welcome, John Waldron.
Well, hello, Alicia. I'm glad to be here today.
So I didn't tell you that part. So yesterday I got texts telling me, hey, they're slamming through bills. They're slamming through bills. Do you know about this?
Yep.
I have no power over that. Can you give us sort of an idea of what ramming through bills looks like?
Okay. Well, yesterday was the last day of deadline week, which meant that bills had to be heard off the House floor from the Senate side for them to be considered to move forward to the governor's desk, and vice versa. The Senate had to hear House bills today. Any bill that didn't make it through the floor process is dead for the year and has to be reintroduced in the next session. So that meant there was a lot of pressure. Oh, question. There's a question. Yes.
When you say dead, does that mean that they can't sneak it in under another name?
Well, you might consider it Wesley dead, mostly dead.
Okay.
Not all the way.
Okay.
Because there are still procedures that can be done. But for the most part, no, dead. But when I say mostly dead, you could take a bill, and we had cases of this yesterday that had not been heard in committee, cases where language was stripped or taken out of bills that had fallen along the wayside, and then placed inside other bills in a process called shucking. So, for example, shucking. I have a great essay on that on my Facebook page. You look it up under shucking fitheads. Anyway, you take a bill. We had Senate Bill 615 was this terrible, awful library bill or school counselor bill. It was gonna put big government into every student counselor meeting. They took the language out of that bill, tossed it out, and replaced it with more awful language. This time about bathrooms. That language hadn't been considered, hadn't gone through the process, but at the last minute, in the last hour, we shucked a bill to put it on the House floor.
So I have a question, and this is this is not what I intended to talk about, but if we're not allowed to talk about gender in schools, why are we allowed to have gender-specific bathrooms and rules?
Well, Alicia, I believe I'm no longer allowed to talk to you about that. No, there is a prevailing belief in GOP circles that our students are being taught a woke transgender agenda in their schools. I asked my own 13-year-old whether he was learning that you could go to bed a boy and wake up a girl in his social emotional learning class, and he said, "No, Dad, that's TikTok." But there's a prevailing belief, that's what he said. There is this prevailing belief, even though a national survey that came out today, an Ipsos survey, showed that only 1 parent in 5 really believes this. There is this belief that's being advanced in the halls of the legislature that somehow our libraries, our guidance counselors, our sex education courses are creating a transgender population. They don't want to believe that kids simply are different in this new generation and want to make choices about their own identity. One of the big ironies that the Republicans don't seem to recognize is that the process of shucking I mentioned before allows a bill to change its identity, but we aren't going to allow students to change theirs.
So they're kind of trans bills.
Yes, you might say that. Right.
So how many bills did they because so what I think I'm understanding is we were rushing through trying to
Yeah,
get as many
yeah,
bills or shell bills or bill shells through
yes, right,
because yesterday was the deadline.
right.
And so what they were doing was they were shutting down discussion so that
Mhm.
they can get them through because you guys might have taken too long and some horrible bill that they were trying to get through
Yeah,
wouldn't have gotten heard
right,
and they'd have to wait.
right. Yes. So we have a house pastor, a minister, who came and spoke to us very movingly about wisdom in government, and then we had a flag salute as we always do, and then I take a look at my notes and I looked up on the board and there's a heartbeat abortion ban on the screen, and we've already moved to previous question. Now, here's what that means. When you introduce a bill, the author has to get up, say what the bill's about. He usually moves to adopt and open and readies for questions. And then we have a period of time to ask questions. If after our questions someone wishes to debate, we can have a debate on the bill. By moving to previous question, they advanced a heartbeat adoption ban in the first 30 seconds of the legislative day. So that wasn't too pleasant. It wasn't too nice. And I suspect one of the reasons they were doing it that way was not just because they had a busy agenda, but because there were all these school children visiting, and they didn't want to have a debate about abortion in front of primary school kids visiting the Capitol.
Imagine that. Now it made national news.
Oh yeah,
It made national news, and I suspect, and maybe it's the cynic in me, that a lot of these culture bills are really just giving them something to run on, not trying to improve
right,
the lives of
right.
Oklahomans.
As my colleague Andy Fugate pointed out, abortion has been illegal under state law since 1910. And yet every year we pass 8 or 9 bills. Some of them are contingent on Roe v. Wade being overturned. Some of them are flat out unconstitutional, and some of them move the needle a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. And and it just becomes part of the ceremony of the legislative process. We're always going to run these abortion bills to demonstrate our credentials, because, well, primaries are in June.
Marys.
I think I lost everything before primaries.
We are we are 10 weeks before
Yes,
primaries,
that's
and
right.
they have to talk about it so that people so they
Yeah,
talk about it in time to make it on a walk card,
yeah.
make
For
it into our
many,
mailboxes.
right. Keep in mind, for many Republicans, the only challenges they're going to face are other Republicans in the primary, which means any Democrats out there who want to file for candidacy in our next election, it'd be really helpful if we had more races all over the state, so that general election voters, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, would get to vote, and not just Republicans in our primaries.
Well, whew, you pull back a scab there,
Oh,
Representative
sorry about that.
Jackson. I
Remember when I said,
I tried.
yeah, remember when I said 1 in 5 parents is dissatisfied with their public school kids? Those guys are voting in the primaries. And that's why 1 in 5 can drive a political agenda, when 4 out of 5 are happy.
And that's exactly it. So I wanted to talk because I don't know if everybody knows that you taught government in high school.
I did.
And one of the things, particularly with the Swallies swindle, as every day it's getting coverage, every day it's getting coverage. I wanted to talk about the division of government, how there are 3 branches of government and they're all supposed to be separate. Um, from your perspective, do you feel like the legislature is separate from the governor?
They're pretty close. First of all, I want to give a shout out to Daniel Rogers, who's, I think, watching us right now, and was a government student of mine back in the day. Daniel, go Hornets! And sorry, the government stuff I taught you, it doesn't exactly work the way I thought it did. But yeah, we have 3 branches. The legislature, of course, is the primary branch. It's even the United States and state constitutions begin with, here's how the state legislature works, because it represents the people. But for a long time now, maybe the last 20 or 30 years, we've given more and more power to governors, and this governor in particular, and we've given him wide latitude to appoint who he likes, to run business the way he likes, to We've given him a substantial quick action closing fund to attract business. And we haven't done a really good job of oversight when, a barbecue joint wants to build in our public parks without permits of any kind and sell you a $14 million brisket. So this governor needs more accountability. And in a supermajority state, well, it's not so easy. The Democrats can complain. We called for Director Winchester's resignation earlier this week. I'm pleased to see that happened now, but you've got to remember that a lot of this Swallies stuff started months ago. And the GOP supermajority has not really held this governor in check up until now.
Well, I only mentioned Swallies because that's not even really my big issue, but it's the one that everybody knows about. I suspect that our governor recommends bills that he's going to sign.
Yes, that's absolutely right. We had we changed the qualifications for state for appointed offices on a regular basis to accord with what the governor wants, often removing professional qualifications from job descriptions so the governor can appoint people that he wants. We've been very generous. I think the governor's budget, the budget for the governor's office, increased 50% in the first year at a time when there was the largest increase to any government agency was to the government's office itself. So we tended to hand this governor just about anything that he wanted. I don't think he's really earned that from us, and he certainly hasn't earned our trust when you consider that we don't know where a lot of the federal money allocated to schools went to. A lot of it went to private schools that haven't really reported back to us. That's in the GEAR fund. There was hydroxychloroquine purchase, millions of dollars spent suing the tribes. And now Swallies. It goes on and on and on. And I really wish that our governor had more watchdogs. The legislature, its first and foremost job is always to hold the executive in check, and we're not doing enough of that yet. Sure hope it's good barbecue, though.
As I sit on the outside, right? As I sit on the outside and I watch, and I watch, I see so much of him getting his way where, he's saying, this is what I will sign. I need a bill that allows me to appoint what seems like to the outsiders, my friend, to a job. I need a bill that will allow me to give my friends contracts. And I don't think that, again, I don't think that we're being good stewards of tax dollars in that way. And this brings me to what I say every day. This is why we must elect more Democrats, not just because I'm the chair of the Democratic Party, but because we need balance in our legislature. We need for our legislature to literally be thinking about what makes best sense for improving the lives of Oklahomans, not what makes sense for campaigning, not what makes sense just for the governor, because right now you guys are mighty and I'm glad that you're there, but there aren't enough of you to stop something that they really want. Is that how it feels?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a question of the way our politics are organized. I want everyone listening to think about the difference between what happens when voters get to vote for what they want on a ballot initiative and what happens when voters elect candidates. When we vote on a ballot initiative, we get criminal justice reform, we get medical marijuana, we get
Medicaid expansion. Yeah.
Right. Things that are of real practical use for the people of Oklahoma. When we tend to elect a slate of candidates, we get endless cultural wars, we get meaningless abortion bills, we get a opaque budget process, we get cuts to education and other core services, and we get $14 million brisket. So what if we elected candidates based not on the letter next to their name, but what they stood for their values? And the thing is, most people aren't given a choice. They're given a choice between, one Republican and another. And 1 in 5 of the voters in the electorate are the ones that are making these choices. If there were Democrats running in every district in the House and Senate, then voters would get to think, get to make real choices, get to think about the issues and not just the ideologies. and we'd get a government that was much more in balance and much better at serving the people's needs.
So that brings me to my soapbox. If you're watching this, if you know someone who's kind of on the sidelines being involved, now is the time to get involved. Not later when we complain about what happens at the Capitol, but now is the time to get involved. Pick a Democratic candidate and help them. And when I say help, yes, I mean if you can't afford to donate to their campaign, but I'm also meaning driving them around, sharing their social media, making sure that everyone knows what they stand for, because we need choices. We need a more balanced legislature so that when a bill that doesn't improve the lives of Oklahomans show up, that there is a robust conversation, and the person bringing the silly bill has to have a real argument about why it's good for Oklahoma. Now they can just shut down conversation, or they can say an argument, preach to their choir, and still get enough votes. We need more Democrats at the legislature. And so I need you to pick a candidate or two. Help that candidate, and don't wait until the primary. Help them now, because they're going to need the momentum going into the general election. So go out to okdemocrats.org/candidates, find some candidates, find your candidate, because we actually do have candidates running in all 5 congressional districts this time. We are contesting races in more than twice as many seats as we currently hold. So we are trying to spread the map. Find a couple of candidates to help. Share their social media, share their message, drive them around, drop lit. They need help in all of these arenas. And as someone who doesn't have to campaign this cycle, but who has had to campaign, could you tell us some of the other ways they can help candidates?
There are so many ways to help candidates. Keep in mind that a lot of these races are really local. In my case, the best use I got out of volunteers in 2018 was people driving me from door to door. You mentioned sharing their social media, but helping candidates with mailing, hosting events like a neighborhood coffee is a great way to help a local candidate. There, you can also writing thank you notes and stuffing envelopes is a great way. If you have technical skills, helping them set up websites, managing their social media, helping them with candidate filing are all useful. If you, a lot of IT or administrative skills are really great for candidates. My predecessor in House District 77 was a 23-year-old kid who just wore out 2 pairs of shoes, knocking doors. It was a low budget, high labor campaign that ultimately unseated an incumbent. When I ran for office, I was a public school teacher. I didn't have a big budget, but I got a lot of volunteers to help me knocking doors, distributing signs, and there's all kinds of things. The most important thing you can do in a campaign is get out and meet people. So anything volunteers can do will help. Let me throw out one more thing that you can do: voter registration efforts. We need more voter registration drives because we have low participation elections. I think when Governor Fallon was reelected, she was reelected by 1 out of every 7 voters. And that was registered voters. What if we had voter turnout like we had when medical marijuana was on the ballot in every election? We could do that by registering more young voters, more urban voters, more voters that can help change the balance in our community, which right now, frankly, is a little too, leans too much to rural Oklahoma. Our state legislature caters to rural interests. We subsidize rural Oklahoma through our budget policies all the time. But if we had more urban and suburban voters participating in our elections, we might get more balance in the Oklahoma legislature. So those are some suggestions.
Thank you, Representative Waldron. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for, the expert, right? Thanks for coming in and speaking on someone who deals with it on a daily basis, who's in there in the fight. Thank you for being in the fight.
Thank you very much. And I want to remind everybody out there of this one thing. There are only 18 Democrats in the Oklahoma House right now, 9 in the Senate. it can feel like we don't have a lot of sway. Don't be fooled. We may not be half the representation, but we are half the conversation. And Democrats make a difference in your state politics every day. Get out there and support them, and let's make sure that there are more Democrats in play in 2022 and 2024.
I do want to say something really quick to
Yes.
Stacy. Yes, absolutely. Rural issues are important. Rural voters are important, but we need a more robust conversation because they are catering to very specific rural issues, and your rural issues are not being considered. And so I don't want to put words in Representative Waldron's mouth, but as someone he used to be my representative, so I know he has a good heart. I know he's not saying let's ignore 50% of the state, but they're catering to the specific what they think rural voters want. I know you. I don't think that the issues that they're catering to are your issues specifically, Stacy. So thank you, John. Thanks for being here. Thank you, everybody who's watching. If you're watching now, if you're watching later, and I'll be back here Monday at 4:15.